So, guys, from the very first day, John Harbaugh made it clear that he wanted to build a tougher, more disciplined, and more accountable football roster. But in the NFL, changing a culture is much easier said than done, and it takes complete buy-in from everyone inside the organization, and it rarely happens overnight. But have you noticed this? As the Giants get closer to training camp, it's becoming increasingly clear that something inside this team is already different. And if these early signs carry over onto the field, it could end up solving the problem that has held the Giants back for years. So let's talk about what's really changing inside this organization. What's up, Big Blue? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Giants. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So, every new head coach stands at a podium and promises hard work, physicality, and accountability. That part is easy. The real test comes once the offseason program actually starts, because that is when players find out whether those words actually mean anything or if it was just a good opening speech. For the Giants, minicamp and OTAs under Harbaugh already look noticeably different than what this roster had grown used to over the past few seasons. There was a clear jump in intensity, and once the training camp schedule came out, it confirmed exactly what people were starting to feel from the outside. Under Brian Daboll, camps were often described as light on padded practices and light on back-to-back sessions, to the point where some people around the league joked that they were closer to country club meetings than actual football training camp. Harbaugh is doing the complete opposite of that. He is bringing the maximum number of practices allowed and based on how he ran things with his previous team for years. It is safe to assume he will push the padded practice count right up to the limit allowed under the collective bargaining agreement. The message from day one is simple. The days of an easy, relaxed camp for this roster are over. Now, a jump in intensity like that naturally raises a question. Will the players actually respond well to it, or will it just wear them down? That question is not coming out of nowhere either. Earlier this year, there was a story where Zay Flowers spoke out about how hard Harbaugh's practices were with his previous team, and he suggested that level of physicality contributed to more injuries. It is a fair point to raise, and it is worth taking seriously because nobody wants a coaching staff that runs its players into the ground before the season even starts. But when you actually look at the injury numbers, that team was healthier than the Giants were last season. So, while the physicality argument makes for a good headline, the data does not really back it up. What it does raise, though, is a legitimate culture question. Even if the practices are not the direct cause of injuries, would players grumble about the workload? Would that kind of environment start to wear on team chemistry over time? Would guys quietly start resenting the demands once the pads go on every single day for weeks at a time? That is exactly the kind of risk you want to avoid, and it is exactly why what came out of one specific interview this week matters so much. You know, Harbaugh always talks about wanting to build this roster around players who genuinely love football, who want the grind, and who want to be pushed. Going all the way back to how he approached the draft and free agency, and the response from inside the building so far suggests he found the right group. It starts with the quarterback, because whether people want to admit it or not, the quarterback is always the unofficial leader of a football team. Jaxson Dart was asked directly how things are changing under the new coaching staff, and he did not hold back. He said Harbaugh's identity starts in the trenches, and that the plan is to build the team's entire identity around physicality and toughness. Then he went straight to the real headline. He said the biggest change since Harbaugh took over has been the culture itself, how the locker room, the coaching staff, and the overall standard now feel connected. He called it a refreshing feeling and said the whole team is genuinely excited about it. There was no complaining, no hint of guys feeling burned out or dragging through practice. It was a direct, confident answer from the guy who is supposed to be the face of this new era, and it confirmed exactly what the team has been trying to build since day one. That distinction matters more than people realize. You can demand intensity, but without warmth and connection, it backfires. Players today are not the same as players from 20 years ago, and coaches who ignore that eventually lose their locker room, even while winning. Guys are entering the league having already made real money in college, and they are not going to respond to an old-school, cold, demeaning approach. If you want to run a demanding program, you have to pair it with genuine charisma, and that has always been tied to the Harbaugh name. Think about Jim Harbaugh's first day at Michigan, walking in with a smile and talking about attacking the day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. That family carries that same energy, and it shows in how their teams talk about them. Compare that to Bill Belichick's later years, where a cold, detached approach stopped connecting with a changing generation of players. Harbaugh understands that balance. Demand more, but give players a real reason to want to be there. And this balance is exactly what made last season bearable for this Giants roster, even with everything that went wrong on the field. You saw moments in the preseason where Jaxson Dart and Jameis Winston were clearly having fun together, joking around, and it looked like a group that genuinely enjoyed being around each other before a single real game had even been played. But fun only lasts so long when the losses start piling up week after week. Blowing a 3-touchdown lead against the Broncos and finishing with only a handful of wins on the season will strip the joy out of any locker room, no matter how close that group was in August. The hope now is that with a stronger culture, more accountability, and sharper practice habits built in from day one, the fun does not disappear the moment adversity hits later in the year. A team that enjoys playing together and is properly prepared tends to hold its culture together even through a rough patch in November or December, instead of falling apart the way this roster clearly did before. And it is not just Dart carrying this message on his own. Jermaine Eluemunor, who has played alongside quarterbacks like Tom Brady and Lamar Jackson, spoke to TMZ Sports and said he believes Dart has everything it takes to become the best quarterback in the league. Now, offensive linemen say that about their own quarterback all the time, so on its own, that part is not the interesting piece. A lineman is always going to talk up the guy he is protecting. What matters more is what Eluemunor said next, describing Dart's daily habits, being first in the building and last to leave, and the way the rest of the locker room has genuinely bought into following him. Those are not the kind of details a teammate brings up just to be nice. You go out of your way to mention someone's work ethic and their daily routine only when it is actually real. Jameis Winston has echoed similar praise, describing how Dart raises the standard for everyone around him, holding both players and coaches accountable in a way that is uncommon for a player still this early in his career. Put that together, the quarterback setting the tone, the head coach demanding more from everyone, and the locker room actually embracing it, and for the first time since the Coughlin and Manning era. This franchise may have a quarterback and head coach pairing where the talent and the leadership are both legitimately there at the same time. Now let's shift to the second story, because there is a bigger conversation happening across the entire league right now, and the Giants are right in the middle of it. With the World Cup now wrapped up, the topic of natural grass in NFL stadiums has picked up real momentum. For years, players have complained about the turf at MetLife Stadium, and nothing ever really changed. But this summer gave everyone a real-life example to point to. FIFA required every NFL stadium hosting World Cup matches to install natural grass, and every single one of those stadiums met that standard without major issues. That alone proves something the league has avoided admitting for years, which is that it is entirely possible to make the switch. And what pushed the conversation even further was the number of players who spoke up publicly. And this time, it was not just the usual voices complaining into the void. Jaxson Dart joined in, saying he genuinely hopes the grass stays in place at these venues. Caleb Williams made similar comments of his own. Laremy Tunsil, who has not made much noise since his gas mask entrance on draft night, came out in support of keeping natural grass as well. George Kittle added his voice too, pointing out that players have made their preference clear for a while now, and that this summer finally proved it is realistic instead of just wishful thinking. These are not random voices either. When players with this kind of platform speak up together, on the same topic at the same time, the league tends to listen a little more closely than it would to a single complaint after a single game. On top of that, the NFLPA has started signaling that this could actually become part of the conversation heading into the next collective bargaining agreement, which would be a real step toward permanent change instead of just another off-season talking point that quietly disappears once the season starts. And for a team like the Giants, sharing a stadium and playing on turf that has been tied to injuries for years, this is not a small issue. It affects health, it affects how bodies hold up over a long season, and it affects how players feel about the organization taking their safety seriously. If the league eventually moves toward natural grass as part of the next labor agreement, MetLife Stadium becomes one of the most likely candidates for that change, given everything that just played out there over the past few weeks. It will not happen overnight, and there will be plenty of debate about cost and maintenance along the way, but for the first time, there is real momentum behind it instead of just complaints that go nowhere. So between a new head coach who is actually backing up his words with real structure, instead of just talk a quarterback who is already earning trust from every corner of the locker room, and a league-wide conversation that could eventually change the very surface this team plays on, there is a lot worth watching heading into camp. None of it guarantees wins once the season starts, but it gives this franchise a foundation that has genuinely been missing for years. Let me know down in the comments which part of this you think matters most for this team going forward: the culture change, the quarterback leadership, or the grass debate. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss what comes next as camp gets underway.